Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. This is Dom Hebblethwaite from the Chartered Institute of Linguists, and I'd like to welcome you all once again to CIOL's Technology for Translators Week, Day 3. After Sara Grizzo's brilliant talk for CIOL on Monday and Angelica's excellent demo and session on MemoQ yesterday, both of which will remain available to all CIOL members in the CPD video library, we now have a presentation and demo from Memsource, one of the most commonly used cloud-based computer-assisted translation tools. CIOL is not endorsing any individual CAT tool. We are ensuring that our members are aware of some of the main options available for translators on the market. And so I'm delighted to welcome Krzysztof Weczerek, Customer Success Manager at Memsource over in Prague. Hello, Krzysztof. How are you today?
Hi, Dom. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Very good. Great to have you here. Okay, so just before we begin, just to let everybody know that in order to manage the session effectively, we will be turning off everyone's camera is turned off and their microphone is turned off. There will be time for a QA session at the end, and all of that will be managed via the chat facility. So please keep those questions coming in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. And just to let you know, this webinar will be ending at 3:55 UK time. That's 4:55 Central European time. And with that, I will pass over to you, Krzysztof. I'm just looking to hand over controls.
All right, and
okay,
you should be seeing my screen now.
That's right.
Hopefully. All right, great. So once again, hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation of Memsource. My name is Krzysztof. As Dom nailed in his pronunciation, thank you very much for that. It doesn't happen very often. I'm a customer success manager at Memsource, and today I'll tell you a bit about Memsource. I'm saying a bit because I won't obviously be able to cover everything. Instead, my aim for today is to provide you with some foundational knowledge to allow you to start working with Memsource proficiently, and to direct you to more educational resources down the way if you decide if you'd like to adopt the platform or look into its functionality a bit more deeper. We'll start off with a little bit about the company itself. Memsource is a Czech company. We were founded in 2010 by our still current CEO, David Čaněk. We've been growing ever since. And late last year, I believe it was in December, we have acquired Phrase, another localization platform, which focuses more on software localization, whereas Memsource is more directed towards enterprises, let's say, small, medium, and large, but also LSPs, whereas Phrase has a slightly more developer-focused approach. Memsource and Phrase are two very different platforms. Today we'll only talk about Memsource because Doing a demo of Phrase would take up another webinar. But down the line, we're planning on integrating the two platforms closer and closer together, and making sure that as much functionality as possible is shared between the two. I will start with I will start in a bit of a dry manner, let's say, explaining what professional setups or settings you might encounter Memsource in, and explain our licensing policy, which is not the most entertaining of topics, but I believe that it will help you get a good idea of how Memsource might fit into your professional setup and what might work best for you. Then we'll talk a bit about the best way to actually learn more about Memsource and get your hands on it. And in the second half of the presentation, I'll walk you through setting things up in Memsource in the product itself, creating users, translation memories, projects, and so on and so forth. Memsource has a lot of functionality beyond that. integrations, connectors, machine translation, but like I said, we wouldn't really be able to cover all of that. Instead, I'd like to just touch on them bit by bit to give you an idea of the various areas that you can then explore on your own. Memsource is a cloud-based platform, as Dom already mentioned. That means that you don't need to install anything to actually start using it. As long as you have a browser, you can simply go to cloud.memsource.com and you can start working, whether you're a project manager or a linguist or a third party. So let's say your clients can have the same level of access to Memsource as long as they're online. That of course also means that it can be accessed from anywhere that has internet connection. And we support Windows, Mac, as well as Linux. If you like working on the go, we do also have Android and iOS apps available. The apps allow you to perform both project management as well as translation work. And for certain use cases, or if you or your linguist prefer working with an actual desktop app on their computer or Mac, we do also support or have a desktop editor available. So I like to think we're fairly flexible in this regard. And now let's talk a bit about the various professional settings that you might encounter Memsource in, or rather, which setup might work best for which professional setting. This is I suppose, the dry part of the presentation, but please bear with me as I try to explain it. Whenever you buy a Memsource license, you basically get a package of several accounts of two main types: a project manager accounts, linguist accounts. The Memsource, anyone can buy the Memsource license. It can be you for your LSP. It can be an enterprise client who purchases the main Memsource license. It can be a freelance translator working just on their own in a team of one. Each of them can buy the license, and within that license comes a package of various accounts. The project manager accounts, of course, they're the ones that you can use to manage projects. So create projects, control resources such as translation memories, glossaries, or term bases. You can upload files and assign them to linguists. With the linguist account, if I oversimplify it, you can perform the translation and review, but you don't really have the option to manage a translation memory or create a term base. And the linguist account is usually provided to the linguist by a project manager. In practice, what this can look like is, in the first instance, if you get your own license, so let's say you have your own small team of translators, you're together, your organization is an LSP, so linguistic services provider. You can buy your own license. You can have, let's say, one project manager account. That person or that account is in charge of actually creating projects, managing translation memories, and uploading files. And then you also provide the rest of your team with linguist accounts that they can use to perform the actual translation. And with this setup, you are fully in control of everything that goes on in your organization or with your license. The translation memories are yours, the term bases are yours, all the user accounts are yours. The other popular use case that we see is when a linguist is provided with a linguist account, for example, by a large enterprise. So the enterprise buys the license, the Memsource license. They're in charge of the resources, so the translation memory, the term base, and so on and so forth. And they provide their linguists or any freelancers working for them, they provide them with just the linguist account. Now the linguist account is already part of the license or the package. So it's for free. That's the upside. The downside, potentially, of course, is that the linguist doesn't have control over any resources. That is managed by the enterprise. So in real life, you could also encounter sort of a mix of these approaches, or both of them at once. Maybe you can have your own Memsource license where you manage your TMs and TBs, and on the other hand, you can have a separate Memsource account provided to you by an enterprise client that you're working for. Each of these approaches, of course, has its pros and cons. If you buy your own license, you have to pay for it, but you are in full control of all the resources. If you are provided a Linguist account by the enterprise, you do not have that level of control, but it is for free, and you don't really need to worry about anything. You are given a login and a password, and use that to log in into Memsource. You do your work, you translate the projects, and you don't really need to worry about licensing or fees or setting up the translation memories. None of that is something that you would need to worry about. So it depends, of course, on your sort of professional preference, as well as what you negotiate with your client. When it comes to the way Memsource works, I used to think that the way the workflow in Memsource is set up is pretty standard. But after seeing, for example, how Phrase works or some of our competitors, I wanted to make sure to outline the main concepts that Memsource is built on, just to make sure that these are clear. So the basic unit that you work with is a job, or you could also call it a file, and that file contains a list of translation segments. So to oversimplify, a list of sentences to translate. Jobs are categorized into various projects. So a project is, in a way, a folder. Within that folder, you can have several jobs, and each of those jobs can be translated into several languages. And then sort of a third layer is our workflow steps, which are different stages or phases that each project can go through. So as we'll see in a bit, I can create a project, I can upload a job into it, have the job translated into 3, 4, 20 languages, and each of the jobs can go through several workflow steps. So the popular ones, of course, are TEP, so translation, editing, proofreading, or review, client review, whatever workflow setup you prefer. Memsource is fairly flexible in that regard. And these, say 3 or 4 layers they're the basic of work or workflow in Memsource. And if you keep this in mind, hopefully the live demo that I'll do in the second half of the presentation will make sense. I'll also touch on the main translation resources that you have available in Memsource. So the fundamental one, let's say that the one that is the bread and butter of most of us or all of us, is the translation memory, or TM, which is basically a database of previous translations that can be reused for higher efficiency. If you're translating something that you've translated in the past, why not reuse the old translation when you don't have to translate it from scratch? A glossary or a term base. So we abbreviate that to TB. That's a list of approved translations of selected terms. And machine translation, which I suppose maybe including that in translation resources might be a bit controversial, but MT is it's a strong component or a prominent one within Memsource, and based on what our clients and their linguists are doing and how they're using Memsource, we do believe that MT is the sort of the third resource already, and it's not the future anymore. It's the present. And machine translation stands for, or it represents the use of software to translate text without human intervention, or not necessarily with human intervention. So when I on the previous slides, when I mentioned that if you have your own Memsource license, you're fully in charge of the resources in your account or within your license. These were the resources that I was referring to. So the translation memory, term-based, and machine translation. That means that whatever you translate for your clients, you get to, so to speak, you get to keep that translation, so to speak, and you're able to reuse that down the line for higher efficiency. When it comes to machine translation, I'll double click on that just a little bit, and then we'll talk more about that in the actual demo. But as I mentioned, it's a sort of a prominent component of Memsource. We have a hub, an MT hub that's called Memsource Translate, which is, as far as linguists and project managers are concerned, Memsource Translate is basically an MT engine. So sort of a provider of machine translation that you can use directly within Memsource. Got a bunch of really cool features that I'll get to later. But one of them is MTQE, which stands for Machine Translation Quality Estimation, which is a feature that, as the name suggests, it estimates the quality of the machine translation that you get from an MT engine. It works similarly to the way fuzzy matches from translation memory work. So you get sort of matches of different quality or levels of quality. So 75% matches, 99% matches, and 100% matches, which correspond to the estimated quality of the machine translation. And then the last meat feature that we will take a look at are so-called non-translatables, which or non-translatables in Memsource are segments, so sentences or phrases, which Memsource can detect as it can detect them, or rather, I'm not sure how to formulate the sentence, but basically, there are segments that Memsource can let you know about, that in the sense that you do not need to translate them, basically. Instead, it copies them directly from the source to target, and that way it can save you some work. Examples of this would be email addresses or abbreviations. So suppose if I had NATO or the EU in the source text, Memsource will be able to detect that and copy that automatically to the target, which might save you a couple of percent of your work. Moving on, getting started in Memsource and actually learning more about Memsource. Of course, we do have webinars on our website. We run regular trainings. Our help center is fairly comprehensive as well, but I would say that really the best way to learn about Memsource, just to actually get to know it, is to start a Memsource trial, which is of course free. It lasts for, I'm actually not 100% sure. I want to say 30 days. It's a 30-day free trial. Once you start the trial, you can use the platform just the same way as if you actually purchased a license. So you can create users in it, create the various resources, meaning a translation memory, term-based. You can create a project, upload files, and then do the actual translation. There are, as far as I know, there aren't any limitations except for, I believe, the size of the files to upload and maybe the number of projects to upload. but those should be fairly high for trial. So you should be able to just test it all out in any way you like. And all these 5 points is what we'll go through in the practical part of the demo. I'll walk you through the through setting it all up to make sure that if you do decide to start a Memsource trial, you're able to just replicate the steps that I'll do today, and Memsource can start helping you get more productive. Last but not least, I'll also mention that we do have a program for Memsource certification, under which you can complete a certification test, which is free and online. And once you pass it, you will be issued an official certificate. And at the same time, you will be proficient in Memsource usage. So for more information on that one, you can simply Google Memsource certification, and you'll be taken to the right page. That was the last slide of the theoretical section of the demo, and we can now go to the platform itself. So this is the login page. It's a simple login page. I just typed cloud.memsource.com in my browser. I can input my my login and my password, or I can also log in with my Google account or using single sign-on. We do have those security options. So let's get started by clicking login. I should be taken to the list of projects, but let's go to the home page real quick. There's no place like home, so let's get started there. And let me zoom in just a bit to make it a bit more user-friendly. There we go. So in the body of the homepage, you can see I already have one dashboard added. I can add many others. This particular dashboard is showing me the word count by target language. I can customize that, change the time span that the dashboard is reflecting. I can also completely flip what the dashboard is actually supposed to show. I can add a new one. I have a nice selection of dashboards for different types of or numbers of jobs, analysis of quality issues, cost savings, leverage, and so on and so forth. I'm happy with just the one dashboard, so I won't be adding more. I also won't be adding an automation widget just yet. We'll see if we have time for that near the end. That's a nifty feature, but a bit more advanced. Instead, we can take a look at the right left-hand panel. At the bottom, I do have a notification center for any errors that might have appeared when processing, for example, automated projects, or down the line, we're also hoping to get important product updates included in this section. It brings up a nice little model window that I'll close. Now, to actually get started and start setting things up, we'll cover these 4 sections one by one. So users, term bases, translation memories, and then projects. And that is really sort of the sequence in which I think it's the most logical to think of when starting with a new Memsource account. So let's start with users, because we do actually need users and people to work with the translation memories to translate the projects. So that's where we'll start. You can see I already have a bunch of users created here, but I can import new ones en masse if I have an Excel file with their usernames and logins, or I can just create a new one, a single one here. So I'll click on the new button, and I'll pretend to create a new user. Like I mentioned in the presentation, there are 2 main types of accounts, also called roles in Memsource. When I click on this dropdown, you can see there's a bunch more but basically linguists and project managers are the ones that are the most important. Administrators are basically a special version of a project manager. So all we're interested in is a project manager and a linguist. Since I've already presumably bought my Memsource license, I am already the administrator of my account, so I don't need to create a new project manager or a new administrator. But let's do that just to go through the process, because it's project managers are, of course, essential. Nothing really shocking in these fields. I just type in the first name and last name. I'll just go with test. The email, I suppose, would be the same, test@test.com, and then the username. Just a little note that usernames do need to be unique for the entire Memsource platform. So if you go with something a bit more generic like John Smith, it's very likely that that would already be taken. So instead, you need to make it a bit more unique by perhaps typing numbers in there or adding a few special signs. You can set the time zone, decide whether the account should be opted to Memsource newsletters, and so on. There's also one neat aspect of Memsource, and that is that even though there are limits on the number of user accounts that you can create, or sorry, not that you can create. There are actually no limits on the number of accounts that you can create. There are only limits on the number of accounts that can be active at one time. So if let's say your Memsource license allows you to have 30 active linguists, you can have hundreds of them created in your account, as long as only 30 of them are active. And then the same goes for project managers. If you have a limit of 5 of them that are active at any one time, you can have dozens of them created, but as long as you have only the 5 of them active, you're good to go. You can customize the rights of each project manager. You can be pretty thorough in those. If you have a new project manager, for example, who is still in training, you can forbid them from creating projects or deleting them. Maybe they can only view them or modify them. You can also limit them to projects by selected clients only, or a selected client, actually. You can customize the same things for project templates, translation memories, and so on and so forth. So pretty customizable. I won't really create the new project manager because I already have a bunch of them. Instead, let's also take a look at the creation of a linguist. Same initial fields, name, last name, email. You can allow the linguist to, or disallow them to edit terms in the term base or in the translation memory. And you can allow them to reject jobs. Maybe you don't want them to have this option. You don't want them to be able to edit anything in the translation memory. Again, maybe this is a junior translator, so you don't really want them making too much of a mess. You don't want them to use machine translation, because again, you want to be very careful with them. I suppose for now we can skip these fields for the net rate scheme and the price list, because that would be they might take up way more time. What's neat is at the bottom of each linguist's account, you can also set something called relevancy for source languages, target languages, clients, and so on and so forth. What that means in practice is whenever you have a project which, let's say, is being translated from English and into Czech, whenever you are assigning the file to linguists, Memsource will prioritize linguists whose relevancy fits the criteria of that project or the metadata of that project. So if I create something being translated from English to Czech, this new linguist would be suggested to me as a good fit. Okay, so let's say we have our users set up. If I go back to the users page, we do have a bunch of project managers, and a bunch of linguists as well. That's great. We could basically start working already because I do have the users. I could just go to projects, create a project, and get started. But before we get there, let's take a look at the term bases and translation memories as well. So I already touched on what term bases and translation memories actually help you achieve. A term base, let's create a new one. Or again, pretend to create a new one. Of course, we'll need a name. We'll go with something simple like test. We'll select the languages that you want this term base to be relevant in. So German, English, and as many as you'd like. One thing to note about term bases is they do not have a source and target language. That concept doesn't really exist. With term bases in Memsource, instead, they're each language is sort of created equal within a term base, which means that as long as a term base includes a given language that you want to work with, you can add it or you can assign it to a given project. So if I have a project from English to German, in this case, this term base already would be fine. I don't need to worry about whether it's from English to German or from German to English. That is not a concern for me. I can also specify a few metadata. So client, business unit, and domain. All of this metadata is something that you can set up in the Memsource setup, and it can help you to filter out projects, term bases, as you can see, translation memories, set up relevancy for linguists, and so on. Let's select, I don't know, LQA demo client, and let's add one more language here. And maybe let's also add today's date for clarity. Once I create the new term base, it's empty, of course, because I haven't added anything to it. But I can add new terms into it manually. And just to repeat, a term base is a list of approved translations for specific terms. So if you're translating medical texts, then of course, medical terms do have fairly rigid rules for how things should be translated versus how they shouldn't. And I can either add them one by one if it's a small term base and I'm just starting out, or if I already have an existing term base somewhere else and I'm able to export it in a suitable format, I can then import that file into Memsource and migrate the terms seamlessly. And to do that, of course, all I need to do is click on import here at the bottom. I choose the file, decide on the settings below, and then I would wait for Memsource to crunch the data a little bit, but then my term base would be ready to go. Let's take a look at some of the existing term bases real quick, just to take a look at what each of the terms can represent. I do think, yeah, this health term base has a couple of points here, or a couple of terms actually. Peppermint, let's click on peppermint. It's a hot day. That might be pleasant. Each of the terms has a lot of various settings that you can play with. There's of course the sort of basic ones, such as status. When you add a new term or your linguist adds a new term, you will have that in the new status. And once it's approved by a senior linguist or by a project manager, you will have it switched to approve. You can also have it case sensitive. You can sort of flip it around and have a specific term forbidden. So let's say if I actually don't ever want to use peppermint in the translation, I would have this checked. And then I can just I can customize any of these numerous settings, part of speech, gender, number. All of that is information that can then be made available to the linguist whenever they're translating. They can just to make sure that they are using the correct term, they can get access to information such as part of speech or gender. There's also the related concept which you can attach, or that additional information, let's say conceptual information that you can add, such as URL to, let's say, Wikipedia or Webster Dictionary, anything that might be actually relevant to the linguist. So you can get pretty detailed when it comes to term bases. I do already have a couple of terms in the health TB, so we're all set on that front. And let's take a look at the translation memories, which will be pretty similar, I suppose, to term bases. Again, you can see that each TM has a name, but where they differ from term bases is that they need to have a specified source language. It's not like a term base, which just has basically a bunch of languages assigned to it, and all of them are sort of source and target. With the translation memory, there needs to be one source language, and then there can be as many target languages as possible. Let's open the Avocado TM. I don't think I need to create a new TM here because the process is very similar to creating a new term base actually. But if I open the Avocado TM and I search for, I can search for anything in it. Let's see if I actually get any hits. Nothing for cholesterol. Let's go for moon. I'm hoping that I do have something there. Okay, well, let's open a different translation memory then. I'm thinking the general one. You can see I already have maybe too many and I need to clean them up. But let's take a look at the general TM. There we go. Okay, so I can see at the bottom already that this TM is already assigned to a bunch of related projects. Same as with the term bases, by the way. I can again import and export existing translation memories from other tools or between Memsource accounts. Again, all I need to do is click on import, and as long as I have the file to import, I'm good to go. So let's take a look. Let's try the moon one again. There we go. Okay, I can already see the list of matches from the TM that include the word moon. I can double click on them to edit them here directly. Same for the translation. I don't have there isn't really a way to mass edit the translations. That's something that's coming hopefully in Q3. But right now, if you need to mass edit anything in your translation memory, you would need to go one by one. And one more thing to mention when it comes to translation memories is the alignment function. You can use align when you have a bunch of previous or older projects that you have translated previously, and as a result of that, you have the source text and the target text. What you can do in that case is upload both of those, and then Memsource will be able to, well, align them basically and create a translation memory from those. And that way you're not, you'll preserve your older work, and it won't go to waste. You can either upload multiple files at once or one source and one target file. So again, this is a pretty nifty feature to help make sure that whenever you get started in Memsource, it's like getting started and transferring your previous work is as seamless as possible. So now we do have the term base, we have the translation memory, and we can now finally maybe proceed to creating an actual project. So I'll click on project. I have already filtered, this is what we're seeing now is a list of my projects, but I've already filtered them for projects created under a specific client and domain. So I can also switch between the projects or between the filter here at the top. If I go to, let's say, all projects, I should see way more of them. There we go. With a lot of different information, you can see progress bars, date of creation, which client they were created under, and so on. And I can also customize the filter. I can enable the filter and start working with it. Let's say I only want to filter for Again, for projects which are under the LQA client, I can hit OK. That'll filter for that client only, and I can customize the columns that I have available here. Maybe there's too many, maybe there's too few, but I can just use this this drop-down menu with a bunch of checkboxes to specify which type of information I'm actually interested in. Having said that, let's just create a brand new project, and that is fairly simple. All I need to do is click on New at the top. As with a new TM, a new term base, there's of course a bunch of metadata that you can fill in, and some of them that you need to fill in. So I can specify the name. Let's go with test again. I can select the client that this project will be for. Let's go for LQA demo. But what I need to specify, and that's indicated by the bold text here, is the source language and the target language. So again, I won't overcomplicate things. I'll just go with English to Czech and English to German. I can already specify the due date, the status of the project, and add a note for myself or for other project managers. And then there's a bunch of settings here at the bottom that, well, they do allow you to customize basically anything you can think of in the project. But I suppose what's important or relevant for today would be the machine translation engine, which allows you to basically select which source of machine translation you'd like to use. I will stay with Memsource Translate, but by clicking on Change, I have a selection of several that I can choose from. I can also determine the behavior of pre-translation, meaning if I have anything in the translation memory that I like to reuse, this is where I tell Memsource to do that. So maybe I want to pre-translate from translation memory, indeed, but only for sentences or segments which are at least 70% identical to the previous translations. That means that if there's anything that's only 10% resembles the translation by 10%, I don't really want to use that, because obviously that is not really identical. On the other hand, if I only want to use so-called perfect matches, so only sentences which are exactly the same as sentences which have been translated in the past, I can input 100 here. I'll return probably to a 70 because I think that's sort of the industry average. I can also see the non-translatables functionality here. I can just disable it if I don't wish to use it. I can disable or enable machine translation in general. So even though I have the machine translation engine selected here at the top, I can decide to not have a project pre-translated using machine translation if for whatever reason that's not what I desire. And then a whole lot of granular settings that allow you to edit which segments should be confirmed, which should be locked, and so on and so forth. Quality assurance, I'll touch on this section a little bit. So quality assurance, or QA, is a list of automated checks that you can have enabled, which will help you and your linguists avoid some of the common issues that you see in translations. So my favorites are leading and trailing spaces. Whenever those are present in the translation, you can have them flagged automatically. Multiple spaces, again, those can be easy to miss if you don't have invisible characters actually visible, or hidden characters visible. Memsource can alert you on automatically whenever there are double, triple, or quadruple spaces, and so on and so forth. So QA checks in Memsource help you avoid many of these issues. You can even program your own checks or your own QA checks using regular expressions, either for the source or for the target. I won't really be able to demo any of these because regular expressions they're not really my forte. even though they're very powerful, and you can create some very cool QA checks in Memsource using them. And then workflow. Yes, let's touch on workflow a bit. If you remember, I mentioned that workflow or workflow steps refer to different stages or phases that Memsource or that a project can go through. You define the workflow stages that are available in your setup, and then when you're creating a new project, you actually you decide which of those workflow stages or workflow steps you want to have available for this particular project. So let's say for this one, I'll go with translation and proofreading. For proofreading, I also have LQA enabled, but I think I'll actually disable it for now, because that would take up a lot more time to go through, even though that's a very neat feature as well. So we will have two workflow steps. First, we'll get a project translated or a file translated, and then we can have it proofread. We'll be translating from English to Czech and German, and that is, I suppose that's it for the project. We don't really need to worry about anything else. So now that we're ready, I can hit create, and the new project will be created. There we go. Okay, that was quick. It's pretty empty, just a couple of white sections. Jobs, as I mentioned, that's basically synonymous with files. That's where we'll actually see individual files once we start uploading them. But before we do that, let's assign the term base and the translation memory, just to make sure that we actually do have them available in this project. To do that, all I need to do is click on select, continue, and for this project from English to Czech and German, I'll actually select the health and the avocado TB. You can see that there are various levels of access that each of the TBs can provide, read, write, or whether it should be used for Q&A, not Q&A, QA actually, quality assurance. I'll skip the QA for these, and I'll leave both in read mode only, because we don't need to write into the term bases at all for now. Then I'll do the same with the translation memories. There we go. We can see that the TBs have been assigned correctly. We have the check marks to confirm. And now for translation memories, again, I click select, I click continue, and I'm presented with a list of translation memories that are available and that meet the criteria of the project. So specifically that the source language is English and the target language is Czech and or German. So let's go for avocado and I suppose general TM. That should work just fine. So now that I've assigned the TB, that means that I will, whenever there's a term that should be follow an approved translation, I'll have that flagged in Memsource. And in case I'll be translating anything that is similar or identical to content that I've translated in the past, the translation memory will help me recycle the old translations, basically. Let's upload the new jobs, or well, a single job by clicking on new in the jobs section. All I need to do here is click choose files if I want to upload it from my local repository, from my computer. Although I can also upload it from an online repository if I have it connected to my Memsource account. We won't do that because that would complicate things, but this would allow me to, if I have a Google Drive account connected to my Memsource account, I could reach into that Google Drive storage and grab any files that I see there, have them imported into Memsource, translated, and when I'm done with the project, I could have the translated file exported back into the online storage, which is pretty nifty. If you have let's say you have a shared Google Drive folder shared with your client, for example, or with your team, it can help you. It can save a lot of emails and back and forth communication. We're going to upload something from my computer only though. So I'll click choose files. I'll scroll to there's a very simple file about moon with I think about 20 words, so nothing crazy. I can already select who I want to be translating the file here. So let's have Neil Armstrong doing the translation and Michael Collins, or actually Neil Armstrong doing the Czech translation, Michael Collins the German translation, and then underneath it you can see that we have the proofreading step, the proofreading workflow step presented as well. And I can do the same thing here. I can already assign the content to anyone I'd like. So let's flip it around. In this case, let's say Michael will be doing the proofreading for Czech, and Neil will be doing the proofreading for German. I can notify them if I click these checkboxes, notify providers. I can select any of my available templates for this communication. I only have the one that says new work, but I can create as many as I like and have and select or choose between them. I can also, in case I assign more linguists here at once, I can then decide to either have or notify all of them at once, or I can do it sequentially, and I can choose the interval between those notifications here. So if I go for, let's say, 10 minutes, Neil will get the first notification. If he doesn't accept the job within 10 minutes, then Buzz gets the second notification, and if he doesn't accept it, then Clara will actually get the last one. And then after that, whichever one of them accepts it first gets to keep it and actually work on it. I'm not going to set any due dates. I will want to have the project pre-translated, meaning that once we upload it, this simple file, if there's anything similar in the translation memories, I want to have that pre-translation used, or not the pre-translation, but I want to have that alt translation used immediately without having to wait for the translators to actually input it themselves. In case if I were importing any more advanced file format, or actually even the simplest file format, which is a text file, I can specify a lot of different import settings here. If I have anything slightly funky even in the text file that I, for example, would like to have converted into Memsource tags, this would be where I can specify that using regular expressions. If I hover over the setting description, I get a useful tooltip that helps me get started. Of course, you can get if you're working with CSVs or multilingual Excel files, InDesign files. There's a lot of different settings that I don't know the half of them, honestly, because it's so complex. So I won't really go too much into detail here. And we're only translating a very simple text file, so there isn't really anything necessary for us to adjust. Having said that, let's click create, which basically it could also read import. We've imported the file. There's a little bit of crunching going on. Memsource is doing the pre-translation. Okay, we got lucky actually. It turns out that I have translated this file before, because 100% of the file, all of the 8 segments in it, have been pre-translated already. Only 12% of that came from MTE. The rest seems to have come from the translation memory. Now I have notifications on my phone turned off, but if I had them on, you would hear a ring from the Memsource app for notifying me that the new project has been created and that Neil and Michael were assigned the files. Now, if I were to sign out as the administrator and sign in as Neil Armstrong as the linguist, I would see a slightly different UI. Well, let's take a look at that as well. So up until now, what you were seeing was the project manager or administrator account. Now we're switching to a linguist account, and you can see here on the left-hand side that Neil has, or I have, I suppose, I have the option of viewing individual projects or individual jobs. If you remember, projects are like folders which contain jobs within them. So project, I suppose, would be a bit more neat and tidy. You can see I have about, what is that, 15, I have jobs in about 15 different projects. Or I can take a look at all the individual jobs that I have assigned, and I should have way more of them, right? I have at least 2 pages worth of individual jobs. So let's stay at on the jobs page. I will filter for new work because I'm only interested in seeing what new stuff I actually got assigned. And I can see that on the 7th of July, which is today, I got these 2 new files, which checks out. I have the English to Czech translation, and I have the English to German proofreading. So let's get started with the English to Czech translation. First of all, I will check the checkbox next to it. I'll click accept, which will accept the project or this job for me. It means it also disappeared from the list of new work instead of it's now in the list of accepted work. And there we are, Sample Moon number 2. If I click on it, it takes me to the Memsource editor. Now the editor itself, I don't think I'll spend too much time on it because I dare say that the overall layout and functionality of the Memsource editor is fairly standard as far as I'm familiar with MemoQ and Trados and all our competitors. The editors are, once you know one of them, it's fairly easy to navigate most of them, I dare say. You have the source text on the left, you have the target text on the, well, in the middle, I suppose. And then on the right-hand side, you have all the various miscellaneous panes, such as cat pane, which shows you the matches from the translation memory. You have the search pane where you can search for any other TM matches, ability to add comments, LQA, and so on and so forth. Of course, the specifics of this might vary from platform to platform. Some of them maybe have source at the top, target in the middle, the cat pane at the bottom, but the gist of it, I believe, is more or less the same. If I'm a linguist, what I see here actually is that's pretty simple because all of these segments have already been confirmed because they are all 101% matches. That means that they are perfectly identical to sentences translated in the past. So I don't actually need to really do much, but let's say I want to do a little bit of proofreading or translating. I'll just change the word order here a little bit. Let's say I'm happy with the translation. So I'll just add a little comment here, maybe to explain my change to the reviewer. Change the word order to something more idiomatic, and I'll add the comment. And once I'm done with the segment, I'll mark it as confirmed. I will now go back to the cat pane, where I can, on the right-hand side, you can see a lot of different colors and a lot of different numbers. The first one, the green ones, those came from a translation memory. We have the 101 and the 100 match. That means that we had an exact match coming from the translation memory that we're able to reuse. Memsource is also telling me that there's a term in the source that I have present in the term base. So that is marked by the TB in the middle column. And I know that satellite should be translated as satelit, and it should under no circumstance be translated as satelitka, which I do have here in the target. You can see it actually underlined. And if I were to go to the QA panel at the bottom, where I can trigger the QA checks, if I click on Run Job QA, I should get a couple of warnings telling me that I might be breaking a couple of QA checks or QA rules. And there we go. Indeed, for Satelitka, I did get the spelling issue. I could either fix it or I could ignore it just for this instance. I can ignore it because the project manager who's setting up this project allowed the issues to be ignored. I also have a bunch of unconfirmed segments and unresolved comments. Because I'm the one who actually added the unresolved comment, I'll just ignore that one as well. And for the unconfirmed segments, we'll actually get to those in a bit. So Satelitka, let's say, I actually like that translation. I'll leave it there despite it being a forbidden term. And what I'd like to bring your attention to as well is this little match, which again has a number, it has a 75, but it is the 75 is underscored. And if you remember, I talked about MTQE, which stands for Machine Translation Quality Estimation. This match that you see in the panel is actually, it came from machine translation. Specifically, you can see here at the bottom, it came from Google Translate, which is, well, that's complicating things actually. It came from Memsource Translate. That's the MT hub that we have available in Memsource. And then if you looked under the hood, it did actually come from Google Translate, but that's not really that important now. But it did, the match came from MT. And if I hover over the score, it tells me that this is a machine translation match, and the 75 is an automatically generated score. And what this allows me to do is, well, it's an estimate. It's an information about how good Memsource thinks that the machine translation is. So 75% means that there would likely need to be some post editing. I would need to polish the translation, but overall it should be pretty acceptable. And that would allow me as a linguist, if I'm now Neil Armstrong, the linguist, that allows me to focus on maybe spend a bit more time on this translation with the 75 rather than the 100 or 101. Or rather, sorry, that was confusing. If we didn't have the perfect match or the 101, and instead I only had the 75 in this segment, I would know that it's probably not perfect based on the estimation of Memsource. And I might need to spend a bit more time on that particular match. Whereas we got lucky. This is a 101. This looks like it's actually been reviewed. It matches the context around it. So I don't really need to worry about it. I can just, I can approve it or confirm it. But if instead of the 101, I had the 75 here, I would know that I need to focus on it a bit more. Another option, which we don't really have present here, is if instead of a 75, it would simply say MT, that would mean that either Memsource is not confident at all in estimating the quality, or it thinks that the quality is so poor that it doesn't even reach the 75% estimate. And in that case, of course, instead of a 101, I would have MT here as well in this little column, and I would very much know that I need to take a good look at that particular segment, because it's Memsource just doesn't trust that quality, and I would need to review it very carefully. Of course, that's a bit of an oversimplification. Sometimes Memsource is a bit too pessimistic when it comes to estimating quality. Sometimes it's a bit too optimistic on the other hand. Of course, we're talking about AI, so it's an evolving technology. But in general, on average, it is fairly accurate in estimating the quality of individual machine translations or segments produced by machine translation. We do have this last segment to confirm, and I think for this particular project, for this particular translation workflow step, we're pretty happy. I can rerun the QA checks just to make sure that, yep, we only have these two QA errors flagged, and we ignored both of them already. I don't need to add any more comments. I'm happy with that. And I am, all in all, I think I can say that as a translator, I am done with this file. So I can mark it as complete. Now, if I close it, and if I were to sign off as Neil Armstrong and sign back in as Michael Collins, I would see that same file, let's take a look, that same file is now ready for me to proofread. Remember, Neil did the translation and Michael was assigned as the proofreader. So if I take a look at new work, this is my account as Michael Collins. And we do have this list of jobs. Again, this is I actually don't have all the columns set up here as a linguist. I can customize them and add the workflow information here. Let's just refresh the page. And that should actually, there we go. I can see proofreading and translation. So I'm interested in this particular file because that's in the proofreading step. It's at 0% for that proofreading step, and it's from English to Czech. And if I were to open it or try to open it without accepting it, I would actually get an error. But I can accept it by clicking the link at the top, and then confirm that by clicking save. And it's no longer, again, it's no longer under new work. It would be under accepted work. I would open it, and I would see the work done by Neil, including the comment here. I could click on the icon of the comment, see what Neil said. Let's say I actually do agree with that change. And then I could, again, go segment by segment, confirm it or edit it. I do see the same QA error we got before for Satelitka. That is re-triggered, even though Neil ignored it. Michael still gets the warning. I'll speed things up a little bit. I'll hit Control-Shift-A to select all the segments, and then I'll hit Control-Enter to confirm all the segments as well. And if I'm happy with the review, I could just click complete and be done with it. But let's not skip that much. Let me just make one change here. Again, change the word order. And one neat thing that I can check is if I go to the changes panel and re-click on the segment where I made the changes, I can also see the changes represented visually here at the bottom, just showing me what I removed and what I added, which is a nifty or a useful feature for me to track the changes, as well as for Neil to track the changes if he revisits the project. But let's say I'm happy with the translation. I can click complete, and as a reviewer, my job is done. I can re-log in as the administrator. So that was Chris, and I should see in the project that you can see that it's 50% done, which basically means that we completed the Czech file, the Czech translation, and the proofreading. If I did the same thing for the German file, of course, we would get all the way up to 100%. Obviously, there's a lot of features that we haven't really touched on. Running analyses, so analyzing the word counts of the file or the files, building quotes, so basically price offerings based on those analyses, sharing files between different Memsource accounts, so meaning between different Memsource licenses, integrations, and many others. So for today, that will be it as far as the practical demo is concerned. I invite you all to either go to help.memsource.com for additional information about any feature that you're interested in. We do also have getting started for project managers and for linguists sort of guides that should be a useful resource. And with that said, I suppose I can hand it over to you, Dom, and to the QA section.
Thank you very much, Krzysztof. That was excellent as ever. The questions are flooding in. I wonder, rather than going just back to the PowerPoint slide, whether maybe we'll just leave it here. We're getting quite a lot of questions with regards to the sort of cloud aspect, and as security with regards to that. I'll just read a couple. Can I work as a linguist in a safe and secure way, on the cloud as it is free? Another question, whether the content can be viewed by Memsource and so is not private. And another similar question with regards to machine translation and being on them, whether there are any confidentiality issues there. So I don't know if there's anything you can say on those questions.
So I'll start with the machine translation, I suppose. That one is the most straightforward. There are basically two ways or two data routes when it comes to machine translation in Memsource. The first one is that you can basically use any machine translation engine that we support out of, I suppose, over 40, and just plug your own account into Memsource, and then the data or the security aspect is entirely under the jurisdiction of that MT provider, which of course varies provider to provider. So for example, if you connect your own Google Translate account to Memsource, then Google's terms of service for their MT will apply. And specifically, I think Google, for example, and Microsoft, I think their terms of service, for example, specify that they will only use the data that you sent them to produce the translation, but they will not use it to mine it or train their MT engines, and they will delete them straight afterwards. With Amazon, if I remember, I think you, for example, have to opt out of the training. So it depends on provider by provider, but I suppose in that case, the most convenient way about this would be to use Memsource Translate, which does have what we call fully managed engines under the hood, specifically Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. And in those three cases, we made sure that that they all follow the same policy, which is that they only use the data to produce the translations and do not use it to train their engines or models, and that they delete it right after the translation has been created. It's a long-winded, I suppose, answer.
Okay. Yeah, no, but that's interesting because I mean it's maybe going back a few years. I remember that there was often some doubt around Google Translate and what they did with the translations, or is that because you've got a special agreement with them?
I think they've matured or improved, so they're now more
probably talking about 3-4 years ago. So yeah.
I would hope.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, just also on the MT while we're on it, and there's a question about the limitation on MT input that goes with the license. I think maybe you mentioned some kind of limit on the MT usage.
So there's when you use Memsource Translate, again, I'll use that one because that's I suppose the simplest. When you create a new account or you buy a new Memsource license, you do get some MT characters for testing. I think that's it depends on the Memsource edition, but it ranges from 500,000 to maybe 2 million characters. And then it's then the way it works, once you use all those up, we follow the same model that I think Microsoft and Google and Amazon use, which is you pay by character, or you purchase bundles of MT characters as you go. Does that answer the question?
Okay, right, yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's great. Yep.
Then I suppose we can go back to the data privacy and security in general.
Yep.
So it's I get the concerns in general, because if you don't have the physical PC at home or somewhere in a safe storage, you cannot be 100% certain. But in this day and age, when sort of everything is in the cloud, I suppose we all do try to get as close to 100% security as possible. So we do have a data security statement on our website. And just bring that up real quick, where you can see a list of our third-party providers. When it comes to cloud, we do run on Amazon Web Services, which is, as far as cloud solutions are concerned, are very robust. We're ISO 27001 certified. That was a weird pronunciation, sorry. So it's I would say that Memsource, as far as modern cloud-based solution is concerned, we're as safe as it gets.
Hmm.
But for some, I understand that for some industries, like I suppose life science, sometimes not even that
Okay.
is enough. So it depends, or it can be there. It's also a matter that, or it can be a matter of having the servers physically present in certain countries or regions. Um, so we do have, I think we have servers based in Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. But
Right.
actually, I would refer you to the security statement where you can see the
Okay.
find the list.
Okay. I mean, it's an interesting question because, yeah, I mean, I couldn't live without internet banking, which is obviously in the cloud, but it's
Yeah, great
always an
point.
interesting one around translation. Okay, there's a question here about cost comparisons with other software. Maybe it's up to you whether you want to
Mhm.
do it with other software, or maybe if you could just explain a little bit more about the costing
Yeah,
model
let's
and the free and the paid for model.
So let's take a look at that actually. And it's I don't actually know what the pricing of our competitors is. I should, but I'm afraid I don't.
Yeah,
But if you Google Memsource pricing, you'll be taken to
yeah,
this page where you can see we do have basically four main editions that each
okay,
build on top of the other one. If you're a freelancer,
yeah,
like a single person team, if you scroll
yeah,
to the very bottom of the page, we do have what we call a personal edition, which
okay,
has some limitation of 2 files for translation at a time, and
okay,
it basically only has that one account. Uh,
okay,
excuse me, but what might be maybe interesting for, let's say, smaller LSPs or smaller teams would be Team Start, where basically almost all the functionality that I went through today is already included. And so that's $27 or 20 euros, I believe, a month, and per license, you get in that bundle, you have one project manager and two Linguist
yeah,
accounts that can be active at one time. You get the TM, TBs. You can work with machine translation, and I think the only thing that's missing, or sort of the what I demoed today, would be the workflow functionality. So you within TeamStart, you don't have the workflow steps. So each project basically has a single workflow step. So I thought I'd mention that so that I
okay,
don't come off as misleading.
okay, okay, okay. Great. Okay. I've got to try and rattle through these questions because we've not got long. Are there any student programs available?
Beautiful question. Yeah, we do have. Let me scroll down if we have that here. Yeah, so we do have uh, an academic edition, which
Okay.
is that has to be initiated by the university or school.
Hmm.
Not by the account cannot be activated by like a single student, but we do have an academic program where we provide universities and schools with basically a fully functioning Memsource license for free. So in that
Hmm.
case, you can have like a teacher or a faculty member reach out to Memsource. And I think if you write to like hello@memsource.com, or you actually click on learn more here, we can get you set up. And then of course, the purpose of those is for educational purposes. But as
Sure,
far as
sure.
I know, there's no limitation functionality wise.
Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. And question regarding non-translatables, using your NATO example, that would cause a mistake in Spanish as it would be OTAN. How would that be
Oh.
fixed? Um,
I need to come up with a better example then for next time, because I'm actually not sure. I do think that non-translatables are language specific.
uh-huh.
So they would be. It's not only a matter of the source term.
Right.
Um, and yeah, there's
Okay.
that.
Okay. Okay. Another question with regards to terminology. Is there a way to tell mem source which are forbidden terms? I mean, if the term base being imported has those words in red, for example, after importing it, would it automatically check them as forbidden words?
Yes, I believe so. Maybe like 80% certain. When you import when you import a term-based file, you can add the metadata in additional columns
Right.
in the Excel file and mark a term as forbidden, for example, that way.
Okay. Great. Um, and a question about PDF files. Most of my work is in the legal area, and I get the work as PDF files or scanned versions of the documents, sometimes blurry.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can do with that? So yeah, the blurry, the scanned document with the print, the stamp on it, or maybe even the coffee stain
Oh
mark
yeah.
on it. Can Memsource work with those?
So not natively. What we recommend instead, and this might be a solution elsewhere with our competitors as well, I don't know, is
Yeah.
we do support an integration with TransPDF, so a third-party provider. If you create an account with them, you can then connect the account to Memsource, and that'll help you. I don't know to what extent, but that'll help you work with even slightly messier PDF files.
Right.
The TransPDF is not for free, or maybe they have like a trial or a low usage
Yeah.
version or a license type, but that I think that will be paid. But as far as Memsource is concerned, that's the sort of the price of working with PDFs, I'm afraid.
Okay. Yeah. I think from sort of past experience, it often depends also on the quality of the PDF with these readers. If it is too smudged, then it's pretty hard to work with. But
Mm.
okay. Um, a question about the free online test for the certificate. What happens if you fail it the first time? Can you take it again?
Um, I I don't want to mislead you, so I'll actually say I'm not sure. You can absolutely take it again. I'm just not sure if there isn't a
If
delay.
there's Okay, well, perhaps maybe that's one, if you wanted to just with a quick follow-up, you could maybe confirm that
Mhm.
afterwards. Um, any option to have suggestions about the best translation option? I mean, to check about the best or match phrase word for the text?
Um, so when it comes to the getting suggestions from the translation memory, I presume.
Yeah, I guess to distinguish between different options is the question.
Um, I suppose. hmm, well, what I can think about off the top of my head would be the information that we saw in the cat pane on the right, where you saw where we saw the different suggestions from the TM. So for example, say where we have a couple, like here you can see there's a perfect match, an 88, a 75, and a 68, and they descend as the level of the match descends. I don't know if
Okay.
that's what the
I think
question
so. I
is.
think that's sort of getting at to understand the kind of priority. Yeah. So yeah, no, that's helpful. Um, you showed and in fact, I think this is going to have to be the last question. So apologies for anyone if we haven't had the chance to read their questions. But you showed the alignment during
Mhm.
your demo. So it's a question of someone who's got old translations in Word, often in table format. So source on the left, target on the right. Is it possible to align those into translation memory?
Yes, I want to say that unless there's something really strange about the file or the format, even the table aspect should be fine. One
Hmm.
possible catch might be um, if if there's something a little peculiar about the table formatting, I'd be I'd wonder if Memsource might segment the individual units incorrectly so that a whole unit
Right.
a sentence is broken up in two. But you should be able to test that if you just like start the trial and go straight for the alignment. That
Okay.
should just
Great.
verify. I would hope it works correctly.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that, Christoph. Thank you very much for the answering the questions as well. Um, That's been absolutely great. Sorry if we didn't get time to come around to your questions. Just before we go, I should let you all know that your CPD certificate and link to the recording will be emailed within the next 3 working days. If you're a chartered linguist or COL member, please don't forget to log the webinar on as part of your CPD activity on My CPD. You can sign up to still to tomorrow's presentation from Trados via our website at ciol.org.uk, and that is it. So I'd just like to thank you once again, Christoph. That was really helpful. Thanks very much to Nadine from CIOL as well in the background for helping make the event run smoothly, and thanks very much for everybody watching. We hope to see you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you
Thank you,
everyone for
Christoph.
joining.
Thank you.